So I was just saying that Mobile Arts for Peace is a 4-year international multidisciplinary project which examines the use of arts-based practices for peace building in Kyrgyzstan, Rwanda, Indonesia, and Nepal. It is funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council in the UK through the Global Challenges Research Fund, and the project has been running since July 2020. It is a collaborative project between universities, artists, civil society organizations, and young people across the world. Young people in each participating country have used arts-based research methods to explore issues and problems that they face and to communicate these issues with local and regional decision makers. We are delighted that today we have 2 MAP teams from Nepal and Kyrgyzstan, and in this webinar, the youth researchers and co-investigators from the MAP Network Plus teams will share their initial findings, and through some examples, they will illustrate how they have created pathways to influencing policy from the bottom up. Today's event is a complex endeavor. It's bringing together teams from around the world, across different time zones, different channels, lots of interpretation channels, and we are doing everything through Zoom platforms. So I really hope that technology is going to be on our side. But please, we do thank you in advance for your patience if we experience any issues. Before we start, I'm just going to share some information that will help ensure that things today are run smoothly. And you must have seen that there are three channels that you could use. So please click on the globe icon at the bottom of the screen, and you will see English, Kyrgyz, and Nepali. Click on the icon that states the language that you prefer. And for people who only want English, please stay in the main room or click on the English channel. The event is recorded. If you wouldn't like to appear in the recording, please switch off your cameras. And we will also ask you to have your mics off. We are not going to take questions throughout when we have the presentations. We are going to take questions at the end when there's going to be a question and answer session. But please start putting questions in the chat. And for our guests that prefer not to type the questions, you're going to have the opportunity to switch on your mic and ask the questions at the end. But due to time constraints, we may only be able to answer a few of them. So we are now ready to start and go to the main part of the event. I'm going to invite Professor Ananda Breed, the principal investigator of the MAP Network Plus project, to provide a brief overview of the project. Thank you again for joining us today, and hope you will enjoy the event.
Thank you so much, Kula, and thank you everyone for attending our webinar today. I'm going to just give a brief overview of the MAP Network Plus project, so you have a sense of our project aims and how we've been working thus far up to year 2 in the Mobile Arts for Peace project. Our project aims to provide a comparative approach to the use of interdisciplinary arts-based practices for peace building in Kyrgyzstan, Rwanda, Indonesia, and Nepal by influencing curricula and approaches to working with in and out of school youth to address global challenges, and also to create structures and modes of communication between youth and policymakers from the local to the global. In phase 1 of the project, from 2020 to present, there's been a number of activities that we've implemented in each of the 4 countries, including scoping visits, training of trainers, youth camps, MAP youth researcher clubs, youth and policy informing events, curriculum development, and monitoring and evaluation. MAP aims to use locally informed arts-based methods and participatory approaches to link local actors to regional and international policymakers. And that's a large focus of our webinar today, is to explore how we've been doing that and also to think through ways that we might be able to do that better. We also aim to engage marginalized young people in the development, implementation, and follow-up of policies to create sustainable communication structures between young people and policymakers. So again, that's a strong aim, is really thinking through how can we use arts-based methods to create a strong communication structure for young people to communicate with policymakers and decision makers and policymakers to communicate back to young people using arts-based approaches. So in Nepal, we're working in the context of the ramifications of the Nepalese civil war and structural violence in Nepal, primarily working with child and youth clubs in the western and southern districts. We've been adapting local cultural forms such as doida, using song and dance, and folk songs and visual arts for dialogic purposes. In Kyrgyzstan, we're working in the context of the 2005 and 2010 revolutions, 1990 and 2010 violent conflicts, riots in 2020, and continuing cross-border conflicts, primarily focusing on working with migrant children and youth in new settlements of Bishkek, also youth and border communities between Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, and multi-ethnic communities in the southern region of Kyrgyzstan. So that's just to give you a little bit of insight in terms of where we are to date with the MAP Network Plus project. Over to you, Kula.
Thank you so much, Ananda. So we're going to move directly to the main part of our session, of our webinar, and we will invite the Nepal team to take the floor. Our two co-Is from the Nepal team is Dr. Rajiv Timalsina from Tribhuvan University and Dr. Vishnu Khatri from Human Rights Film Center. So welcome, everyone. We are going to hear from you. You are going to provide an overview of the MAP Nepal and an introduction to phase 2 youth-led projects. And I understand that you also have a young person with you that is going to provide a testimonial. So I believe, Ananda, that we have a recording of the presentation, but
yes,
that we're going to stream, but maybe Rajiv and Vishnu would like to introduce themselves and say a few things about their work before we screen the video.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Rajiv. I'm glad you made it. I know you're in transit in airports right now, so thank you.
Yeah, I just landed in Kenya, Nairobi. I am just good afternoon from Nairobi. Good morning. I'm so happy to be here. I'm Rajiv Timalsina. I'm assistant professor of conflict, peace and development studies at Tribhuvan University, Kathmandu, and one of the co-I of MAP team. So I'm so happy to join today as one of the speakers.
And is Vishnu with us?
No, Vishnu not here.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. Camilo, can you please confirm that you're able to stream the presentation that's been pre-recorded, please?
Yes, of course, no problem. Should I play it now?
Please.
Perfect.
Thank you, Camilo.
Namaste, everybody. I'm Rajiv Timalsina.
Give me a second. It seems that it crashed.
Rajiv, if we are having trouble streaming the presentation, is it okay if we share screen and you speak to the slides?
Yeah, it's fine.
Excellent. So we'll give it one more shot, and if not, then we will.
Co-investigator of mobile arts for peace, Khatri. He is from Human Rights Film Center. Namaste, everybody. I am Rajiv Timalsina, co-investigator of mobile arts for peace Nepal team. So today I am going to talk about MAP Nepal, practicing bottom-up policy making processes. So I am representing Mobile Arts for Peace Nepal team. So I am supported by my another colleague, co-I Vishnu Khatri. He is from Human Rights Film Center, Nepal. I am representing Tribhuvan University, Nepal. So in this presentation today, I will talk about 5 major issues. First, I'll talk about the overview of MAP Nepal. Then I will briefly touch what are the phase 2 youth-led projects in Nepal, how it looked like. And then I will present about some testimonies and art-based outputs, what we achieved in last phase 2 projects. And after that, I'll be focusing on the overview of communication structure to inform decision makers. At the end, I will talk about the decision makers' responses and how they are engaged in our project. So let me check you to the overview of MAP Nepal. So we started in 2020 March from our inaugural event in Nepal. So at first we did our scoping visit to 5 districts to figure out who could be our possible partners, or who could be our stakeholders, or where we can work. So during that scoping visit, we organized cultural artist workshop. We collaborated with a lot of other local artists and other people. And also we did stakeholder mapping. And during that time, we make the list of all the possible stakeholders from the districts, from the area, with whom we can collaborate, we can partner. And we also visited schools in the district. We met the child club people, we met the teachers, we met the school management committee and parents association. So then after that, when we have all the list, we had the MOU with all the possible partners. So during that time, we didn't put any restriction. So it's more about
Hi, sorry, we have briefly stopped because it seems there is an issue with the interpretation in the Nepalese channel. I'm just going to check very quickly and we'll resume in the next minute or so.
And in the meantime, please, if you have any questions for Rajib and the MAP Nepal team, please type this in the chat box and we will be able to answer this later in our session. I can see that some people are joining the event today. Now, welcome. We have some issues with the interpretation in Nepali.
Yeah.
That's why we have stopped.
Yeah.
And Camilo is trying to resolve this issue.
Yeah, I'm struggling to reach to Santosh, to the
Also,
interpreter. So, yes.
I have a problem with Kyrgyz interpretation. I got my interpretation function got disappeared. Can you connect me once more?
Okay.
Kyrgyz
Okay. I will sort this out.
There is some internet issues. Something.
Yeah,
Yes.
it disappeared for me as well.
Okay. I will try and add everyone else again.
Amanda, do you think that we can release Camilo from sharing his screen? And maybe
Yes,
I don't know whether your issue with the screen sharing has been resolved now.
Okay, but I don't see how that could. I reset up the interpretation channels.
Yes, I can see it now, Camilo.
Perfect.
now it's back. We can see
Is it back?
Yes,
Great.
it is back.
Yeah,
Yes, we can
it's
see the
back.
icon.
That's absolutely strange. Okay, perfect. I'm glad it's working.
Yeah.
So
Yes, it got restored. Thank you.
playing the video.
Yeah, and are we asking people to click again and select their channel, Camilo, or is automatically assigned?
No, please do people share, choose and select the preferred channel because it's possible that it left.
Yeah, so you will see that there is a globe icon at the bottom of your screen. Please click there and select the language that you prefer. Okay, Camila, are we about to resume the video now?
Yes.
Great. Okay.
Parents association. So we met the child club people, we met the teachers, we met the school management committee and parents association. So then after that, when we have all the list, we had the MOU with all the possible partners. So during that time, we didn't put any restriction. So it's more about using our network or using our local other network to identify all the possible partners. And after that, we organized workshop and orientation. For example, video making workshop, theater practices, drama workshop, map manual orientation, safeguarding workshop, and painting and other like art-based approaches workshop in several schools during our phase 1 project. And there was like series of art-based map club activities during our phase 1. And during that time, when we are 1 year long, like map activities ongoing, we also had meetings with local artists, stakeholders. Basically, many of our work was led by youth or young people who are part of our MAP Child Club. And after that, we had some advocacy and collaboration meeting. So we, as a COI and MAP Nepal team, along with focal teacher or our child club, MAP clubs members, we all had several rounds of meeting with local government people, other local stakeholders. We had possible collaboration meeting. So after that, in 2021 December, we had a call for a small grant application, and we received more than 16 applications. Out of them, 7 were selected for the small grant project, phase 2 project. And the small grant phase 2 workshops, we had several other workshops like kickoff workshop, monitoring evaluation workshop, how to apply creative method in small grants. We had the workshop. We have also safeguarding workshop. So we try to support this all grantee through our workshop. But these small grantees, they themselves prepared the proposal ideas, they submitted their proposal, we reviewed them, we collaborated with them, we refined the idea, and then they were the one who implemented it. And finally, in last month, in April, they have the policy brief and reporting workshop, and also they had the performance and end of the year event where they showcased what they have done in phase 2. So if we talk about the phase 2 youth-led projects, we had 7 MAP child clubs. So all these clubs have members between 12 to 19 years old in 7 different locations. So how they applied this youth-led project? So they use video making method, street drama method, songs and dance, painting, photography, and also they are more using like indigenous art forms, Deuda, Tamang Selo, Jhaure, and other kind of local forms of arts, music and songs and dances. So if we look what they achieved, what they have done, they selected issues themselves in consultation with their peers. And also they used conflict tree analysis method to determine their issue, to analyze the issue. And if we look the issue, what issues were covered in phase 2? Human trafficking, caste-based and gender-based discriminations, child labor issues, child marriage issues, drug abuse, and menstruation issues are the major highlight from the phase 2, by where young people put a lot of emphasis on these issues, that's the pressing social issues for them at the moment. They prepared the outputs, they performed in school, they performed in communities, they also informed policymakers, and also they collected responses from the policymakers. So this was the overview of our phase 2 youth-led projects time. So now I am going to show you some testimonies, so how they worked, what activities they did. So they selected issues and they also analyze issues by young people. So this photo reflects how they worked by making the conflict tree chart and other chart, like to discuss the issues during that. So there are a lot of like conflict trees are there. So this is one example where one of our team, they analyzed the issue of drug abuse among the young people and the causes as a roots and also the effects from that. So that's also they tried. And they had art-based outputs, like they use indigenous songs, dance. They explored possibility how they can integrate local art-based output in like working with those issues for creating awareness, policy making. So now we can see they showcased, they implemented through drama, street drama, basically, and also music, dance, and their own like co-production. We can see their work was supported by the community people. Even you can see the local police office, local like mothers committee, and other like forest users committee, irrigation committee. There are a lot of other local stakeholders. They were gathered during the day and they supported, they worked with our MAP club to create that street drama, and they also took part in role plays, and we can see that kind of co-creation and performances in community level also. So you can see thousands of people were reached through our 7 small like grantees in MAP clubs. So we can see hundreds of people attended each session. Each club, so at least they performed in 3 to 5 locations in communities in front of hundreds of people, from their peers to adult to the decision makers. They joined their projects. So they also, I think, use indigenous dance performances. They also prepared videos to post in social media. And after all the outputs, we had reflection and experience sharing, advocacy, and with policymakers, the meetings. They invited local policymakers in one town hall or one small like meeting room, and they had reflection, what they did and what were the responses from policymakers. So these were some pictures. So when we talk about what are the structure of communication that was used, first of all, they used the performances. The decision makers attended the performances that communicated youth-led research projects, the issues experienced by young people. They showcased what are the issues, what are the problems they experienced during the project implemented period. And also they visited government offices. They showcased video, they streamed video in the government offices where our local decision makers, they watched the video along with other staffs there. And some of our MAP clubs submitted later with the issues that the young people identified, how they researched and what are the methods they used, art-based methods they used, and how issue can be resolved. And also most of them, I think all of them, they posted all their performances, all the issues, all the discussion in their social media. Some of the MAP clubs have their YouTube channel, Facebook like channel, very popular in Nepal. So they used Facebook and YouTube basically to promote the ideas, which were like was highly shared and reached thousands of people in Nepal. So finally, our MAP clubs also prepared short policy brief for the local decision makers and NGO people and other stakeholders to showcase that young people also can decide agenda or issues for the project. They can implement the project, and art-based method is very comfortable for them to share their ideas, opinion with decision makers. So there are some ways how they use policy brief also. Some of them are so creative to have policy brief in pictorial form or some template, templates. So they organize end of the year showcase where a lot of national and local policymakers were invited, and they were presented what they have done in all during the project period, and they collected responses from the policymakers there. So this is a sample of the handwritten policy brief. There they are writing the journey of change, what change they found, the method, and what are the activities. Also, there's a one chart you can see. This is a song, the local indigenous Deuda song, how the boy will sing and how the girls will sing. So they have the question and answer response, dialogic forms there. they are talking about the problems, the pressing problem of the young people. So that song was presented to in the written form to the local decision makers also. So this is one example of written policy brief, which is typed and published and sent to the local stakeholders, including NGO people, local government people, decision makers, and other people. So when we all presented all this communication, so what are the responses from decision makers? It's very important to see that when our young people submitted all these ideas, when they communicated all these ideas, we also received a lot of responses from decision makers. So the decision makers happily participated and consulted and reflected in the meetings. That's one very important message, that they are recognizing the role of our MAP clubs and young people. Local government recognized youth-led art-based method as important tools and promises to allocate budget in next fiscal year. So few of the local government, they promised that they will allocate certain budget in next fiscal year for such activities, for MAP activities in their area, their constituency. Also, in two local government area, MAP Nepal able to inform the local curriculum, and one MAP intervention school area has local curriculum that is produced about the local indigenous arts and culture, and MAP Nepal was happy to partner with them to produce that and also to circulate that in the community. In one school, MAP Nepal built community radio station, and local decision makers match the fund also. We put certain fund, and also local government and school also match the fund to build that studio. So now we have this built collaborative project as a community radio studio, which can be used by our MAP club and the student to produce a lot of art-based communication materials, and they are streamed there. So Nepal police also joined the street drama. So not only as an audience, but also performers. That's very strong response or message from the decision makers to recognize the young people's role about awareness and also collaboration and co-creation in community level. So we are currently conducting monitoring, evaluation, and learning from phase 2 regarding impact to establish best modes of communication for youth to communicate with decision makers also. So it's ongoing task for now. So at the end, now I want to conclude with some of the notes, so what were the purpose of this project? So I think our MAP Nepal grant, this second phase grants, our focus was to showcase how art-based MAP methodology works, how young people are capable of setting the research agenda, and also they are able to co-create the knowledge is possible. Also, we want to showcase that the dialogue between decision makers and young people become comfortable if it happens through creative arts such as the MAP methodology. So that are the main points as of our object here. And we have engaged decision makers in so many ways. We have engaged them, involving them in our meeting, workshops as participants and contributors. Also, in 1 or 2 workshops, some of the decision makers, one ward chairperson himself as a resource person ran the workshop how to handle video and film for our young people. That was a wonderful opportunity. And some decision makers collaborated with young people to co-create outputs, to co-create street drama, co-create music, videos, and films. That's very interesting. And many decision makers also become audience of project output, and also they are giving responses, how they find the message and how they will respond, take it further also. So there are many things worked very well. The collaboration worked very well. The co-production worked very well. Young people able to set example that they are capable of discussing pressing social issues also. But at the same time, we found that our work, phase 2 work, where our young people MAP club was active, they are more useful in local level engagement, but they are a little bit facing difficulty in wider national level engagement. So MAP Nepal, we intervene, we try to establish that connection. So we are working on that part. So our next engagement is focusing more on evaluating, monitoring what are the impacts from phase 2 project. So we are collecting that evidences, our next engagement. And also we are trying to expand that to national level policymakers engagement. We already started that from last week. We had end of the year event here where we invited a lot of national level actors, decision makers there. So we are furthering that. We'll be doing that furthermore in this next year to engaging more national level policymakers to establish that connection. Thank you, everyone. This is our presentation. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Rajiv. And I think we have one more video to screen, which is the testimonial from a young person.
समावेश आफ्नै क्लासको साथीबाटै स्टार्ट गरेको थिएँ जो चाहिँ एउटा श्रमिक परिवारको शिकार भएको थियो जुनमा चाहिँ उसलाई श्रमिक जस्तै बालबालिका लेभल चाइल्ड लेभलमा चाहिँ ऊ इन्भल्भ भएको थियो अनि यो म्यापले गर्दा चाहिँ मैले धेरै कुरा लिडरसिपको कुरा सिकेँ अनि अरु जगेर्ना दिनुपर्ने यसलाई सधैँ आफ्नो माथि तहमा राख्नुपर्ने क्यामेराबाट एउटा मोबाइल जुन हामीले मोबाइल डेली युज गरिन्छ त्यो युज गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ म जहिले पनि गेमहरुमै अनि फेसबुक सोशल मिडियामै इन्भल्भ भइरहेको थिएँ त्यो हटाएर चाहिँ अब अहिलेको जुन यो भिडियोग्राफीहरुमा अनि फोटोजहरुग्राफीहरुमा चाहिँ म इन्भल्भ हुन थालेँ त्यसैमा हबी बस्न थाल्यो त्यो चाहिँ मेरो लागि एकदम इफेक्टिभ पनि छ अनि जुन चाहिँ मेरो फ्युचरको लागि पनि युज हुन सक्छ अनि त्यो चाहिँ मलाई एकदम राम्रो पोइन्ट लाग्यो त्यो एकदम मेरो लागि बेनिफिट थियो
र ट्रेनिङबाट हामीले नाटक गर्न सिक्यौं र मानव बेचबिखन सम्बन्धी नाटक खेल्यौं त्यसपछि चाहिँ हाम्रो नाटक खेलिसकेपछि हामीले नाटक देखायौं जो त्यसपछि चाहिँ हाम्रो वडा अध्यक्ष ओम प्रकाश रोगाजीको प्रतिक्रिया सधैँ यस्तै राम्रो काम गर्दै जानु म सक्दो सहयोग गर्छु अनि भन्नुभएको थियो त्यसपछि चाहिँ हाम्रो उपप्रमुखज्यू जनचेतना फैलाउने काम गरेका छौं केही नकारात्मक छ तर सकारात्मक कुरालाई मात्र ग्रहण गर्नु भन्नुभएको थियो अनि त्यसपछि चाहिँ हाम्रो पत्रकारज्यू सधैँ यस्तै कार्य गर्नु म तपाईहरुको कार्यलाई साथ दिनेछु सहयोग गर्नेछु भन्नुभएको थियो
हामीले ग्रुपमा काम गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ सबजना मिलेर काम गर्न पर्दो रहेछ एउटाको मात्र एफर्टले चाहिँ काम नहुँदो रहेछ सबजना मिलेर गरे मात्रै त्यो काम चाँडो सकिँदो रहेछ भन्ने कुरा मैले यसबाट सिकेँ र हामीले चाहिँ यस्ता म्यापका यस्ता कार्यक्रमहरूलाई नेपालको हरेक विद्यालयसम्म पुर्याउन सके राम्रो हुन्छ जस्तो लागेको छ मलाई चाहिँ र यसका लागि चाहिँ हामी जस्तै युवाहरू नै यसका लागि अघि बढ्नुपर्छ यसका लागि हामी आफैले नै कुराहरू उठाउनुपर्छ त्यस्तै म्यापको सहकार्यमा हाम्रो जनप्रिय माध्यमिक विद्यालयमा चाहिँ हाम्रो स्टुडियोहरू खोलेको छ हामीले चाहिँ स्टुडियोमा चाहिँ बाल गीतहरू अनि पढाइ सम्बन्धी पढाइका कुराहरूलाई शिक्षालाई कलासँग कसरी जोड्ने भनेर योजना बनाइरहेका छौं
Thank you so much, Rajiv. Thank you so much to the Nepal MAP team. It has been wonderful to hear about your work. I'm sure we are going to have the opportunity to discuss this further later on in our event. So with us today, we have two members of staff from the Open Innovation team, which is a cross-government unit that works with academics to help officials generate analysis and ideas for priority projects. It also provides a range of policy impact training to select universities. In our webinar, Olivia O'Sullivan and Katie Arthur, both based at the Open Innovation team, will take part in conversation with presenters and our guests as a way to respond to the strategies that are being used in the MAP project to inform local level policy and decision-making processes and offer advice on how to influence policy. Olivia and Katie, thank you so much for joining us today. While you're getting ready to share your responses, I will also read a short bio for each of you. So Olivia O'Sullivan is one of the deputy heads of the Open Innovation team. She has worked on recent UK defense and foreign policy reviews, climate change strategy, and COVID recovery policy in her role. She previously worked for the Cabinet Office, the Department for International Development, and the Guardian newspaper. And Katie Arthur is a policy advisor in the Open Innovation team. She has advised policymakers in departments, including the Department for Health and Social Care, Ministry of Defense, Department for Culture, Media and Sport, on evidence-informed policy in her role. as well as facilitating expert workshops for the Home Office. She has previously worked for King's College London, the Royal Society of Arts, UK Parliament, and MIT Centre for Civic Media. Olivia and Katie, over to you.
Thank you, Kula, and thank you, Rajib, and everybody for a fantastic presentation from MAP Nepal. Please forgive me, I might start coughing because I'm a little bit under the weather today. But the first thing I wanted to say was that's a very lovely introduction, but I think at one point you were saying, Kula, that we would potentially be able to give advice, but I would like to just emphasize that we also I learned a lot from that presentation and from the kind of bottom-up policy making processes that you have been talking about, and looking at the materials that I know we're going to hear about from the MAP Kyrgyzstan presentation as well. So I think really what we can offer as respondents is more just some of the questions that tend to come up regularly and the sort of strategic challenges that we tend to see in similar situations. So what we do in our team is we often advise academics and experts who are external to government, central government or local government, how they can influence and impact policy. And I think there are two issues that are often the most challenging. One is identifying what is most important and material to people's lives, especially people who are often excluded from policy making. And I found it really interesting and inspiring what you were able to do with the MAP Nepal project in terms of involving lots of young people in identifying the issues they most cared about. I'd love to hear more about how you use the conflict trees, for example. And I think that was a kind of really interesting process. But the second issue that tends to be a really big strategic challenge is moving from identifying issues and engaging policymakers in them, getting policymakers to listen or attend workshops or join activities, to actually shifting their incentives so that they make different decisions and they change what they do. And that, I think, is like one of the central challenges that we see kind of all over the world with all sorts of issues is you can engage decision makers, but how do you really put quite sustained pressure on them to get them to change their behavior? And how do you identify who really has the power to change the issues that you've identified that the young people that you're working with care about, such as child labour and some of the issues that you were talking about? So I think, Rajab, you ended the presentation talking about how your next steps are to plan for engaging national decision makers and moving more to advocacy. And I would just put some questions in your mind. I'm sure you have thought about them, but they're always, we find when we're advising people on policy impact strategies, good questions to consider. And one of them is thinking about not just who are my stakeholders, but what are their incentives and how could we shift those? Thinking about whether you have allies and how you can find them. So it's great to see the young people in the video talking about how they learned through the process that you can't have, it's very difficult to have impact on your own. And I would say that that's the case on a larger scale, right? If you want to engage national decision makers, who are your allies and how can you find them? How can you keep up some sustained pressure on those in power? And how can you make it easy for people in power to change, to work with you, to act in ways that you want them to? Can you connect the issues that the young people you're working with identified with broader ones, with ones that might win you other allies? And can you, in doing that, create a bit of a coalition of actors who can put pressure on national decision makers? So I think at this inflection point that you are at, this really successful identification of resonant issues, engagement of local decision makers. Now,
I think we have lost Olivia. I think that she's frozen now. Olivia, can you hear us?
Yes.
Sorry, I think we've lost you for a few seconds.
Did you, where did you lose me? Shall I just finish what I was?
I think you were talking about creating coalitions with actors. Yeah.
So I think basically the inflection point that you are at, having successfully identified these really resonant issues, how do you now build a coalition that is going to put sustained pressure on decision makers? It's worth thinking in doing that. What is your position in relation to those decision makers? We often use this way of thinking in our team. Do you define yourselves as campaigners who want to change something from the outside? Do you define yourselves as critical friends? So you have a good, positive relationship with decision makers or people in power. You largely agree with them, but you do want to offer critique to get them to change? Or do you want to collaborate? Are you actually aligned with people in power and the decisions they're making? You want to work with them to implement those decisions. So I think that the questions I would pose, or ways that we often advise people to think about what they're doing at this point, are exactly those. How can you find your allies? How can you build a coalition? What will shift the incentives of people in power? And where are you in relation to those actors, campaigners, critical friends, or collaborators? That's mainly what I would say. Katie, I don't know if you want to add anything, or there might be a question.
Thanks, Liv. I think you did a really good job of summarizing a lot of what I was thinking. I was really drawn to the engagement with the youths and how successful you were at sort of bringing them through to kind of engage with policymakers, which I think is as valuable as kind of engaging the policymakers themselves, teaching children and empowering children to do that. So I guess, I was just sort of interested in that channel and how you sort of envisioned building that channel to kind of sustain that engagement with the students and policymakers in the future. But that's more of a question than anything else.
Thank you so much, Katie. Thank you so much, Olivia, for your really thoughtful responses and raising very critical questions. I think these are questions that they are at the heart of the MAP Network Plus Phase 2. And hopefully, I know you said that maybe is not so much about providing answers, but I think by steering and really helping us start thinking and unpacking these questions, this is going to be particularly valuable for our work. Thank you so much. I think we are going to come back to you after the Kyrgyzstan team. But for now, we are going to continue with our presentations. And I'm going to invite the team from Kyrgyzstan to join us, to take the floor. MAP project in Kyrgyzstan is led by Foundation for Tolerance International. The project is led by Dr. Tajika Shabdanova and is coordinated by Anara Enginalieva. Together with us today, we have two more members of the FTI team, the project coordinator Nurgul Sultanova and Shaksanam Akhmatalieva. So Anara, Nurgul, Shaksanam are also joined by a young member of the Youth Council that is taking part in the MAP activities in Kyrgyzstan, Nazmiya Rustam Kuzi, who is also going to present their work with us. So Anara, over to you and your team. Thank you so much for joining the webinar and for your presentation today.
Thank you, Kula. I greet all the participants of today's meeting. My name is Anara Enginalieva. We represent Foundation for Tolerance International. We are partners of project Mobile Arts for Peace. Camilo, can you move the slide for this further? Next one. Camilo.
I have moved it now. Yeah?
It's good. Map of the project is to empower the youth to promote dialogue between youth and adults for peace building, teaching youth through theater, video, painting, music, dance, and comics. And the second goal is to explore the use of various art forms for dialogue between youth and adults to develop effective, sustainable, and efficient approaches. The main target is the youth people from 14 to 18 years old. We work in 16 target groups, 4 provinces of Kyrgyzstan. Next slide, please. In Kyrgyzstan, we have done 2 phases. I want to focus on the 5 main stages of MAP. First was informing and involving youth, national and local stakeholders in the program. In this stage, we have visited the provinces. We have done characteristics and identified the problems which public and other organizations exist, which could be partners for us and who have the same aims and who share our aims. We have also identified the local context, behavior, and which feelings and channels of dialogue exist in order to map out what kind of work we can carry out in that context. Second stage was building the capacity of youth to research and use innovative and traditional art forms for peace. In this part, from our 16 communities, we have made trainings about research based on different mobile art forms. We have created 16 school clubs which have so this is stage 3. They have done research among peers to define the local problems, the analysis and discussion. On the stage 4, together with the youth, we organized a dialogue about problems among the youth and the adults. And all these dialogues took place through the usage of art. Stage 5 was advocacy for policy change. It was based on all of our previous dialogues. We have prepared a policy brief. We wanted to attract the attention of decision makers to the problems which are relevant for the youth and who are affected by these issues. So the first, second, and third stages were nursed by the project. They were under the guidance of the project, and the stage 4 and 5 was more autonomous. They were themselves doing the work. They were speaking in front of the decision makers, and they were changing and adapting their presentations So they made it all to the way that we could show to the decision makers. Next slide, please. Next slide. Mhm. To speak about the issues raised by the youth, the main and core project aim was to reach out the voices of the youth. Was the problem of inability of people to interact, lack of social cohesion. This was a problem between young people and the society. They did that through forum theater, through drawings and poetry. This kind of emotional conditions took place. There was a triangle. To please, student, parent, teacher, please support the choice of girls to study. Another performance was, please hear me. Who will support me? You see on these pictures some fragments from the forum theater. And during the discussion, you see that both the actors and the spectators were discussing. Next slide, please. Other problems was school bullying, violence against teenagers by older students, children of migrants left by their parents with relatives, over-reliance or misuse of social media, children affected by poor hygiene and pollution. All of these were reflected in these pictures. There was a video clip, forum theater, and in the last picture, you see how the law enforcement representative is speaking. This is the representative of the law enforcement speaking with the young people. Next slide, please. Also, children raised the ecological problems. They showed it through pictures, infographics. They have done exhibitions at school with people who are making decisions. In these pictures, we invited experts, people who can professionally explain the reasons and consequences of ecological problems, how they affect us, and to motivate us for solving these environmental problems. How to not to violate the environmental rules and conditions. Next slide, please. Next slide, yes. The previous slide, please. Yes. MAP builds vertical and horizontal links. At the national level, we got in touch with the Ministry of Education, the State Agency for Youth and Affairs. At the local level, it was local government, community organizations, school administrations. This included psychologists and social pedagogues, police, cultural centers, and adult artists and youth workers. based on what aim is followed by these issues. We invited, if the issue was about the consequences of problem, we invited experts from the, if it's ecological, we invited ecologists. If it was medical, we invited medical and social staff. We also invited psychologists. If the issue was about school bullying, we invited, if there was some violent issues by elder students to the younger ones, we invited police and psychologists. If we try to change the situation on other issues, then we invited other professionals from the government. And using these our connections on the horizontal and vertical level, our youth learned to understand who are relevant for which issues, which structures should be addressed to. It was a new knowledge and new experience for the school students, because students were not sorting out for people making decision, and for adults it was another opportunity to listen to the young people, because in our mentality they consider that listening to the young people is not so relevant. It's usually the other way around. The young people should listen to the older. So they were breaking these stereotypes. We have stories when older people are saying that young people's recommendations help improve their professional skills at their work. Next slide. Based on the how the young people have done research and identified problems and prioritized, then they analyzed. Based on that, based in their presentation meetings and through forum theater or drawings, they talked with decision makers. We have prepared policy briefs from 16 schools. We have 16 policy briefs for various topics which our young people are raising. So we wanted to show here one of the policy briefs, which is written on the problem of violence against children of migrants left in the care of relatives. In Kyrgyzstan, because of the unemployment and economic crisis, many of our citizens leave the country to find a work to provide for their families. And when they go out, they leave their children in the care of their relatives, sometimes relatives and sometimes neighbors, because they have no other way. So these children are very vulnerable in other families, and they get affected by problems of violence. Even in Kyrgyzstan, there are cases when children left by parents, they get exposed to problems, and even cases of suicide occur. In the project, many children raised that issue. I think our participant of the project, Nazmiya, will show that. She's member of the youth club. She will tell us what kind of reasons and causes they have revealed during their problem identification and results of some dialogue meetings of the school clubs. Nazmiya. Thank you very much. My name is Nazmiya. I'm from Kyrgyzstan. We are talking about analytical letter. Here we show the root or the consequences there is the violence of migrants. So the reasons of that problem is the high degree of unemployment, and they leave children with relatives. They leave the children with their relatives or their acquaintances or even neighbors. The other reason is that lack of communication between parents and migrants. Why? A child who is homesick about her mother, she wants to say that, but she can't be at work and absent. Or when the mother calls, the child is at school and there is lack of communication. Also, the relatives may hinder the communication, so the communication disappears. And the child cannot say, "Mother, I need your heart, I need your love. I need your love in order to melt my heart." So they are unable to say that. So they get exposed to violence because of these emotional problems. We have a saying here that even if they beat you, it will be educational. The adults may think that they are upbringing and educating their children, but they might use very harsh words. They might traumatize the children. They think it's educational method, but there is no care. Another problem is that there is no care system working. The guardianship system does not work because they are all thinking about money and material part. Another thing is that a sense of impunity and punishment of those who use violence against children. They think that those who are doing violence, they think they are doing it right. And in the end, they never get punished for that. They say it's okay because no one is after that, no one is punishing. The next problem is lack of awareness about children's rights. There is no proper information in society. We can say that the lack bad awareness in society. They don't know the rights of children, and the child doesn't know his rights also. That's why such violence happens. Also, there is a silence about the facts of violence against children. The neighbors and the close children don't make any voice. They think it's not their problem and they are showing indifference. This leads to increasing of violence. The other problem is that children are afraid to talk about their problems to adults because they never got freedom of speech. The children cannot say that their uncle is beating them or their aunt is forcing them to work. They are afraid to speak about that. Next slide, please. Next slide.
Just to say, sorry to interrupt Nazmiya and Anara, maybe 5 more minutes.
Yes, we will manage.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Rahmat. The consequences of that. The consequences are that low self-esteem of children, violation of mental and physical development of children. So they hear a lot of bad words and physical harm because they get beaten up. The impact on the future of children. These children can also do violence in the future to others because they grew up in this environment, and many of such children grew up as criminals. Inability to adapt to society, because these children were suppressed from childhood. They were always suppressed, like they are low people, like they shouldn't speak and they are something unworthy. So they become very isolated. Children become aggressive and they can even commit suicide. Aggressive means that they become very indifferent and isolated. They might even go to suicide because of their psychological pressure. So the last consequences, rooting. So next slide, please. Recommendations. In order to solve these problems, we should address to local self-government. We should increase the responsibility of parenthood. We should talk within educational institutions, public prevention centers, social protection, mosques, law enforcement agencies, parents' committees, and youth committees. They help us to resolve this problem. The second recommendation, to monitor the identification of children of migrants, provide them and their families with social and legal assistance. Then we turn to educational institutions. We turn to schools. We strengthen our work with parents on the prevention of child abuse. Establish communication between schools and parents of migrant children, for example, via WhatsApp, whether the parents are communicating with their children. Also, to conduct preventive conversations with families at risk. It means that these schools should get in touch with parents and check that they are okay with, they are communicating with children. Our recommendations as MAP is to conduct dialogue using art methods with the invitation of experts, lawyers, psychologists. Yes, to conduct dialogues through art methods, who teach about reflecting the violence cases. The next one is to hold dialogue meetings about children's rights. This is the advice given to other schools. Thank you, Nazmiya. It's very good. Now, Shahsanam will speak shortly. We collect a lot of testimonials, which shows us what impact our project is doing. That impact can be on personal level, on public level. Shaksanam, please. It's very good.
Shaksanam, just to say that we should complete in a couple of minutes.
Okay. We show here the testimonials of students. I always think I didn't have a voice. I learned to express my opinion, to convey our voices to decision makers. I realized that if we have our own opinion, we know how to express them, then adults will definitely support us. There are many of such testimonials. Another decision maker is saying, I used to consider school children small and incapable of cooperation, but it turns out that I need to keep in touch with them. They can help make my work more efficient. Law enforcement representative. Next slide. Next. The project impact at the community level. In the Uzgen city of Osh Oblast, the mayor supported the MAP school on the need to conduct preventive talks on the problem of violence against children. In 10 city mosques in Uzgen, we should say that there are many mosques there, and many stream of people go there for prayer. And around 10,000 worshippers participated. Video about poor sanitation and unsafe use of an outdoor toilet, school toilet, filmed by members of the MAP school in Jalalabad, helped the school enter the list of schools for renovation under the World Bank program. Barpe MAP school club participated in a meeting of local deputies and showed their video about the garbage problem. For the first time in the history of the village, children were invited to a meeting of deputies, of local parliamentarians. This suggests that adults took the activities of young people seriously. Another story is that Aravan MAP school organized a discussion among peers, which showed a video about the problem when older people force younger ones to work in their fields. Adults were not aware of the emergence of such a problem, but the fact shows how important it is for young people to be given a voice. In the whole project, we collect such voices. We hope to share with them in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shaksanam. Thank you, Anara. Thank you, Nazmiya, for really joining us. It is quite powerful to hear the stories and see that actions taken by young people really reach the local decision makers. So thank you very much. I'm going to directly ask Olivia and Katie to join us again. And Olivia O'Sullivan and Katie Arthur, as I said, are based at the Open Innovation team, and they are going to offer their response to the presentation that we just heard from the MAP team in Kyrgyzstan. Olivia, Katie, over to you.
Thank you so much, Kula, and thank you, Anara and colleagues, for that presentation. Sorry. It's really great to hear about your progress, and in particular, testimony from young people that you've been working with. I think the only thing I would add is similar to our response to the last presentation, are just some of the kind of strategic questions that I'd be really curious to hear how you are thinking about them and what your kind of long-term plans are. So it particularly struck me with this presentation, in particular, your work on the child abuse and migration issue is it strikes me that you're seeking to shift social norms, which is kind of some of the most sort of challenging goal to set yourself, because it's not just changing legislation or changing a policy. In several cases, you mentioned it sounds like kind of policies and systems that are meant to protect children do exist, but they're not being implemented, or they're being ignored, or there's a kind of social norm around sort of not taking them seriously. So this is a real challenge, and I wonder if you have any examples or kind of previous issues that used to be acceptable in Kyrgyzstan or in local areas where you're working that subsequently changed, and whether you have any kind of thoughts or reflections on what happened and who acted and what incentives shifted to make that happen. Because like I said, shifting social norms is kind of has this very, I liked your image where you were using a tree with very deep roots, right? It's not just about changing some rules or changing one or two kind of pieces of legislation, it's shifting an understanding of what is acceptable. So I think it's always really worth thinking about how in the past has that been accomplished, and how could we learn from that. And I also would emphasize similar questions to the questions that we posed to the MAP Nepal team. Do you have allies, especially on a national level? How can you find them? How can you build a coalition that could keep up sustained pressure on those in power? And who are your kind of champions, and how can you sort of cultivate the people that you mentioned who engage with your work, local police officers and people like that? How can you sort of cultivate them as champions of your cause in the long term? Is a question that I would, those are kind of some of the questions that I would pose, but it's really fascinating work, and thank you for sharing it with us. I don't know if Katie, you have anything you'd like to add.
Thanks, Liv. Yeah, I think the only thing I was thinking of maybe kind of separately was just about kind of like international best practice, because I think like children of migrants is definitely a kind of international issue. So I just wonder like what sort of work is being done internationally, and like it could be interesting to consider what would be needed to like adapt best practice into your context. And that might not be useful, but it could be an interesting way of thinking through the specific context that you're working within. And I also just really like the fact that you built such a broad range of stakeholders, and yeah, kind of using different levers for change. I think you mentioned about using kind of like mosques and getting the different kind of communities there to engage with your project. And I think that's a really nice way, like Liv was saying, changing social norms is difficult. So thinking about the different ways to do that. But yeah, thanks so much for your presentation, really interesting.
Many thanks to both of you for offering this, your reflection, and also raising the questions. And because we're moving to the Q&A session, and we probably have time to answer 2-3 questions. If any of our guests would like to switch on their mics and ask a question to the Nepal team or to the Kyrgyzstan team or to the broader MAP team, please do. But while we're waiting for these questions, maybe I wonder whether we could start with your question, Olivia, about whether the Kyrgyzstan team has any examples of issues that have changed in the past, and what happened, who acted, and you said, what incentives changed. So I wonder if Anara, Shaksanam, Nazmiya, do you have any thoughts on this?
Если пока еще никто не готов, я могу привести.
I can bring some example here. When we worked with young people and analyzed our problems with the help of the problem tree and looked at the roots and at which level we can address those roots, then we came to understanding that many of our problems can be resolved at the local level. And we analyzed which are their institutions who can help us to resolve them. And during our forum theaters and other kind of presentations or exhibitions, in the end of the event, we had such a part who what can we ourselves do, those who are living in this context, and as a result we have made such a plan that those people who are leaders of that community, they can hold this kind of activity or that kind of activity. Or participants were giving some recommendations to certain institutions that they should do this or that. In the city of Uzgen, they solved through Uzgen mayor city to hold prophylactic or preventive talks in the mechet, in the mosque. The largest audience is collected by the mosque. And if we can do that in the Friday prayer, where many people come to the mosque, if they could do some talks in that meetings, in those prior prayers, I think it is one of the methods when social norms change in the society, when there is such cooperation between school clubs, social workers, youth committees, mayors, and mosque, when they together work about one single issue. I think it's also an example of social change of the social norm. Maybe other people in my team can say, or Shahsanam or Nurgul or Nazmia. Shahsanam has a story. First time in the village, the local parliamentarians invited school club. They showed a video about the garbage problem in the village. And during the presentation of this clip, they even made an appeal to the local government. And our school club they also expressed that letter to the local parliamentarians, and they showed their video. I think it's an example of success of the school club. It was first time, and many people talked about that in the village. So it turns out that youth can be heard and they can impact in some village. Thank you, Anara. Yes, I wanted to say that. I will add that director of this school calls other pupils, other school students to get into this project and to transfer this knowledge to other school students. It's a very good result. The students feel that they can participate and their voices can be heard. And all the adults started understanding that through arts, they can show the problems. The youth cannot openly and equally talk with adults, but through arts, they can show and tell their feelings and their world. Thank you.
Thank you, Shaksanam. Thank you, Anara.
Rahmat Shaksanam.
Are there any questions from our guests? Please raise your hand. Maybe we have time to answer one more question, I think. Maybe it's not a question, maybe it's a thought, maybe it's a reflection, a response to what you have seen from the two teams. Maybe it's also a provocation of something that we should be doing, and we're not doing that well. Okay, I think there's a question in the chat. Veena would like to ask a question to Rajib. I hope Rajib is still with us. So Rajib mentioned the words collaboration, co-production in engaging with young people. And Veena is very interested to know how you applied this in practice. What are the key considerations when thinking about collaboration and co-production? And if I may add to this, Veena, especially doing collaboration and co-production with policymakers. Rajib, are you still with us?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Veena, and thank you, Kula. It's very interesting.
Thank you, Rajib.
I'm also very thankful to Olivia and Katy because they also provided very thought-provoking questions. And so now I am responding to this. I also would like to link some of the questions they raised earlier, Olivia and Katy also. So one important point we have to understand, I think I would like to share 4 or 5 points. One, when we started working, we didn't establish new MAP club. Rather, we revitalize already existing MAP clubs in the schools. In Nepal, we have practiced that all the schools should have club, children club or youth club in the school. And also in Nepal, the policy is there that the municipality, local government are encouraged to make child friendly. So if there are some indicators are there. If young people or children are engaged in decision-making process in governance, like project selection or deciding the issue for development project selection, the local municipality get awarded as a child-friendly municipality. So, but even though that is rarely happening, the law is very nice. It expects many things, but how is very, very problematic. So that MAP become one example how we can involve young people in decision making. So it's co-production, collaboration, not only from bottom up, it's also from that side, because policy people also are eager to know methodology, how they can hear young people. So when we came up with this idea, one example I'd like to give from, 2 examples, one from Palpa. One ward chairperson, he was elected in 2017 as a ward chairperson in local government. He studied a video making master's program in Russia earlier. And he came back and he elected. Now he was excited to see this. So he became one of our facilitators when working with the MAP Child Club. So now you can see the policymaker himself coming as a facilitator and working with young people. So we organized 3 days workshop with young people, how to make videography. He only focused, I think his expertise was supporting young people to learn the ways of making videos and editing them. But young people decided their topic. And many of the issues, for example, in Palpa, like they decided a topic not from outside. So they shared with us that the young people, they had a meeting and they found one of their own member, one of their own child club member was involved in child labor. So they took the issue from their peer and they explored further using the conflict tree. They consulted parents, they consulted teachers, they consulted other people. So now issue picked by the young people, and there is consultation with other stakeholders, including teachers, parents, decision makers, and other people. And then they prepare the conflict tree. So roots there, because young people themselves are not able to identify everything. So they have to explore the issues, they have to explore the impacts, they have to explore the reasons of those issues, problems. So I think this is a real example. It's happened naturally. We didn't develop any model how we create collaboration or co-production. But when we started applying MAP, it organically grew out of the process, that in some places decision makers are part of this whole process. Some, like in Hetauda, Emakwanpur district, and also in Kanchanpur, some of the decision makers are become part of the performing arts. They also role played along with the like our young people. That means they sat together, they decided how they will perform role plays. During the trial also, they're practicing together and they are performing in the community together. So it's very interesting to see in that way. So young people brought the issue, they explored further with the help of stakeholders, and they planned some art-based intervention to discover the issue. So during that intervention, I think most of our time, they involved other people. So it is collaboration between young people, artists. They took help from the artists to performance. Also, they have collaboration of teachers in schools, so that they can practice, they can invite other people in their clubs. And also they are getting support from local government, because these people are allowing them spaces, and also other. So we can see multiple layers of collaboration and co-production. So from the issue selection to the intervention, like the whole project design, also in the performance, and also I think, so it's not only about advocacy part. So we are all done this, young people, and they are just not going and show that. It's also from the very beginning, in each layer, we can see that involvement of different stakeholders at the different level of participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajib. And I hope this answers your question, Bina. And it's great to hear, Rajib, that policymakers are very eager. I know you have elections coming up, so hopefully the new people that are going to be elected are also going to be very eager to engage with the MAP activities. I think we don't have time to get any more questions, and we're going to move directly to our last part of this of the webinar, which is more discussion in groups. So we're going to have 3 breakout rooms. Then in group A, I think Rajib is going to be leading on that, and it's going to be the Nepal room, where interpretation in Nepal is going to be available. We're going to have the second group, which is where interpretation in Kyrgyz is going to be available. And I hope Anara and Shaksanam are going to be leading the discussion. And then we are going to have a third group, which is really the English channel, where it's going to be myself and Ananda in this one. So we would like to hear from you. MAP Network Plus is aiming to create pathways to influencing policy from the bottom up. Can you share your experiences with us? We would like to learn from good practice. We would like to learn from strategies that are used in the film to inform local level policy and decision-making processes, any tools that you are using to actually support these processes, and any advice that you have to offer, you can offer to us that could influence on how to influence policy. And we have seen that lots of the activities are really focusing on the local level, but of course, we would like to move beyond the local level and really inform national level, regional level policy through these changes that are happening at the local level. So please, I think Ananda or Camila are going to split us in rooms. I'm going to share a document. Yeah. We would like a facilitator and we would like a note taker as well. Please take some notes, and then we will be back in 15 minutes. And we will be asking you to maybe share 1-2 key points from your discussion before we wrap up our session. So this is a link in the chat box. I put a link to a Google Doc. Please use this to take some notes.
And Camilo is just setting up the breakout rooms now. So very soon you'll be invited to join breakout room 1, or breakout room 2, or if you're wanting to communicate in English, you'll just stay in this main room, in the plenary room. And Camilo, if you can just let us know when those breakout rooms will start, that's great.
And I can see that some people are already in the Google Map, so the Google document, so that's great, it's working. Thank you so much, Katie. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you so much for offering your response to the 2 presentations.
Okay, I have created the rooms now. There are a few people that I have not assigned. So those can just let me know where do you want to go or stay in this room as if that's what you prefer. Is everyone ready?
We are.
Brilliant.
So we will stay in this room, isn't it, Camilo?
Yes.
Yes, for the ones that are unassigned.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Is there anyone in this group? So I see people are going to the different breakout rooms. For anyone who wants to operate in English, you would just stay in this room. Otherwise, you join the breakout rooms that Camilo has invited you to join.
So I think we have 15 minutes, Ananda, in this group, or maybe a bit less than 15 minutes. I think we should be aiming to go back to the plenary by 10 to 11.
Great, thank you. And please do note if there's anyone in this room that's having trouble joining one of the other groups, and we can try to move you as well. So thank you all very much for joining today's webinar. This is a general discussion, so we want to learn from you how to best inform bottom-up policy making, what strategies have you used to inform policy making, and what has worked for you or what has not worked. So due to the limited time, instead of going through each question, maybe perhaps you can choose which of those 3 questions you'd like to speak to. And feel free to just unmute yourself, turn on video if you're happy with that, or add information in the chat. Would anyone like to start? How to best inform bottom-up policymaking? Or what you might have been doing to help inform policymaking? Any takers? Harla? Just to note that Harla has joined us from MAP Indonesia. Would you say that there are any different approaches, Harla, to how MAP Indonesia has engaged with local decision makers than what was discussed earlier? Is there anything you would add to that?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Ananda. So very interesting presentations from Nepal and Kyrgyzstan team. I think I would just add talking about finding your allies. That's been challenging in terms of, well, for us, for example, in the MAP project itself, we're a Catholic university operating in a Muslim majority country. So it's important for us to find, at the beginning, allies who are able to work with, to make sure that we're acceptable, our approach and so on, especially during our baseline. We know that that one of the challenges was this perception. There is a perception in the community that trying to influence young people by saying, oh, things arts and entertainment are not according to religion, especially Islamic religion. So that was one of the challenges that we faced. So when we partner up with children's forums and local section agencies, so that's and cultural artists, so those are the kind of strategies that have worked very well. For example, like in the production of the comic booklet, we wanted to make sure that the local leader kind of endorsed the project. So we, not ourselves who came to meet with this local leader, although we had done that at the beginning of the project, but because this is a more community issues that was raised in the comic booklet, we asked whether the young people and the youth facilitators would like to talk to the local leader about the project. And they did, and it was very well received. And the local leader gave a very good feedback, and the feedback was considered helpful, actually, by the young people and the youth facilitators. So that was incorporated into the comic booklet. So I guess it's a bit of the strategy comes from knowing your position in this research, but also in the policy you wanted to influence through people. Because in Indonesia, policy means people. Like, you have to know who you know, and finding your gatekeepers. So that's one. And the other one's about the incentives. I guess I would just add that because you have to know the current policy agenda, so to speak, like what's trending, almost like what's the main issue in youth policy in Indonesia. And we have identified that in terms of voices. Like, currently the national level government is trying to make sure young people have their voices heard more than before, because of the pressure that participations have to move from tokenism to something more meaningful. So what MAP is offering is that alternative methods with the art forms. Now, what we still need to do, and we are moving towards that path, is showing that, okay, this is young people are creating the alternative ways, and that the output is actually representing their voices. Because sometimes at the end of the day, the output matters, if that makes sense. Not the quality. I'm not talking about the quality of the film or anything, but how it's how well it is in delivering message. So we're working on that, but at the same time, you have to make sure that the agenda is still there. Like, just making sure with our contacts that it is the government is currently still focusing on that. So you need to kind of make sure that you're out there, that they know MAP exists and you can influence something. So that's what I would say in terms of incentives. That's all. Sorry.
Great. That's really helpful, Harla, and really good to have it contextualized in Indonesia as well. I see we have a few other participants, I might just call on random names just because I want to hear from you. But please let us know if you don't want to speak, that's fine. Laura, I'm curious if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and saying how you might respond to any of those 3 questions and or anything that's been in discussion today. Okay, so if not, if Laura, if you're not able, I might call on someone else. Sophia, are you there? Would you be interested in sharing your responses to any of those 3 questions?
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Hi. My personal experience with any maybe how to say attempts to inform at least people about certain agenda and policies that are going on was pretty disappointing in general because when in our high school a bill in Russia passed that basically legalized domestic violence, and in our high school we thought that we had pretty how to say morally high ground people who won't allow women be beat up. Yet when we tried to do our project, our art project with the booklet that was informing people about the abuse in general, how it happens, because generally it goes from very early stages. People are pretty young when they get into abusive relationships, and when they stay there, we faced some barriers from our school. Sorry for anxiety. From the officials at our school, and basically we didn't have the opportunity to make our booklet possible, at least to inform the young people in this high school and maybe in our neighborhood. So because I got pretty disappointed that our project wasn't getting any support from people that I was expecting to get support from, I kind of went after it, away from it. Yet, as far as I understand, one of the other initiators that was trying to still continue with this project, I think she found support in other feminist spaces, and she was eventually able to do some work with that project, but I didn't really keep up with her, and that is why I decided to enter this webinar and listen about successful projects. And I guess what went wrong was probably our unawareness of where to look for support. And probably, as for my part, was pretty quick disappointment that I felt and stopped with that project. Definitely, I feel that as a human being disappointed is okay. But yet, as we want to progress forward, we should probably bear this with these feelings and attempt again and again until we actually succeed. And I really hope that the girl that we was working on this project, she actually succeeded eventually with it. And I really hope that everything is great with her and will at some point raise more awareness about the domestic violence issue in Russia. Yep.
Sophia, thank you so much for joining our webinar today. And it's been so valuable to hear about your experience with a different project, but also to talk about, disappointments. So you've said that you created a booklet for the high school. It was about this new bill that almost legalizes domestic violence, but the real disappointment that there wasn't support from your own school. And I can hear that must have been incredibly frustrating and hurtful. But I mean, the fact that you've joined this webinar today to find what might have been ways to work in your project for it to be successful, or or how could you continue working on the project? So Sophia, please do contact us, because I think it is really important that we have kind of peer-to-peer support structures. On the 24th of May, we're also going to have an event called Agents of Change, where our young people from across the 4 countries come together and show their projects. And that might be a really lovely opportunity for you to get to know more young people working in this area. So Olivia talked about that idea of, you know, who are your allies, and what better allies than other young people working in this area. But hopefully you'll find an ally with MAP as well. And likewise, us with you. So this is the email of the MAP project, map@lincoln.ac.uk. But we'd love to invite you to that webinar as well. Thank you very much for sharing, though. That's really, really insightful, Sophia, about the different layers and different issues. I don't know if anyone on the call wants to pick up on any of the comments that have been made so far by Harla or Sophia, or if you have any new things you'd like to add to the discussion.
I think one thing that I would like to add, Ananda, from what Harla was saying, is that I think, and please, Harla, forgive me if I got this wrong, it's that the policymakers, the local decision makers were involved at the outset, because they invited the young people, they gave feedback. You said that this feedback was incorporated in the output, in the comic book that you created. And this might be a very important mechanism to actually follow, that, you know, we are not just going at the end. You know, once we have done our activities, once we have done, you know, we have published, we have outputs, and then at the end we go to the decision makers, we go to the policy makers, you know, to say, here it is. It's actually trying to keep them aware and engage them in the process from the beginning.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
That's something I'm taking from what Harla said. And I wonder whether in the high school that Sophia has been referring to, this, I don't know whether, you know, the senior people, you know, the head teacher was actually aware of the activities, was actually trying to kind of like bring this person on board with what was the initiative, the project.
I think my understanding is that potentially the head of school or the local leaders are the ones who didn't agree with this booklet or the views of the young people.
And I think also Sophia highlights very strongly power dynamics between young people and people at more powerful positions, you know, and how we can break down these hierarchies, how we can really work around these power dynamics and support young people to be able to deal with that and tackle these issues, because it could be quite intimidating and disappointing, as Sophia has expressed.
Yeah, so it seems like one of the questions is beyond the school. You know, where are the allies? Going back to Olivia's question, are there local NGOs? So you had already said, Sophia, that there was a feminist kind of group, that group was an ally, and I think that's an important point. So Camila has noted that in 1 minute we'll have the other groups join us. Kula, I believe you're the note taker respondent to summarize some of the points when we return back in plenary. But thank you all very much for your comments. And if we didn't get to you or you have further comments, please feel free to put those comments in the chat as well. Olivia, I don't know if you're still on. I know you're not feeling too well today, so don't feel pressured to have to comment, but I don't know if you have any comments based on any of the points raised so far.
Yeah, thanks, Ananda. I mean, it's just so interesting to hear people's more specific examples of trying to sort of push for bottom-up change in their own contexts. Sorry, and I agree with what you were saying about how useful it is to share things that didn't work actually, and that were in some cases a disappointment, because I think it helps with thinking through some of the questions that everybody has been raising today, which is even once you have engaged decision makers or policymakers, and even once you have articulated issues that you care about, there's still a challenge around shifting the incentives of decision makers to kind of change in the direction that you want. And that is often a second and much larger challenge. And I think, yeah, so it's interesting to hear people's reflections on that. And also, as I was saying in the discussion with MAP Kyrgyzstan, it's, I think, very instructive to focus on things that didn't work and disappointments, but it is also very useful to take a look and see if you can find examples of successfully shifting kind of social norms or policy, and figure out what happened there and why was that able to be successful. I think that can be very useful.
That's great. Thank you very much, Olivia. And welcome back for those who are returning from some of the breakout rooms as well.
Ananda, we have very few minutes left, so I wonder whether we go to one of the, well, we can go to each of the rooms, but maybe ask our facilitators to just highlight one main point from their discussion. So do we have
Sure.
Do we have Rajib back with us? I'm not sure if Rajib from the Nepal team is back with us, but I can see Shaksanam. I can see
Kyrgyz team is back.
Yeah, Kyrgyz team is back. So good, because we don't have much time. So would any of you please maybe summarize in just a few, just in less than 1 minute, really, one of the key points in your discussion?
I see Rajib is back.
Yes, I can see Rajib now back as well. Rajib, we are going to come back to you once the Kyrgyz team really shares some of the discussion they had. Who is the
Tugelbay will present.
I can hear. Is Anara?
He saved Tugelbay is going to present.
Okay.
Tugelbay.
Yeah, Tugelbay. Yes, please.
Hello once more. Shortly, the excerpt from our talk is, we have written this one. How best we can inform the policy developers about the principle of bottom-down, bottom-up. I'll not take you long. I think throughout the whole project, I want to emphasize that recruiting experts about some level so that they can professionally highlight the problem. They can professionally express what we have done. Our children discuss very broad number of issues, and we prioritize one of them. the very relevant hot topic about children and young people.
Да, использование различных видов искусства.
Using different art forms to make a constructive dialogue. We invited
лица, принимающие решения.
Inviting the policymakers to dialogue. During those meetings, young youth people really raise the relevant issues. Usage of to demonstrate the issues with conflict vulnerable approach. How can we inform the decision makers on the regional level? We have done 16 provinces. We can present them at local and regional level. Which strategies have we used for informing the decision makers? What worked and didn't? What worked is that we invited various structures, various institutions. Most of them participated actively. What did not work? What did not work? Local structures did not want to bring out that problem to the higher level. They wanted to help us on the local level, but advancing the problem on the more regional problems, they were refusing and they were finding other excuses.
Okay, I think we need to wrap up. Thank you so much, Tagelboy. Ananda, I believe we don't have time to go through the other rooms, but I think as a MAP team, we will come back to these questions, maybe in our meetings, but also in future events. I wouldn't like to keep our guests longer. On my side, I would like to thank everyone for joining the webinar today. And I would like to particularly thank the wonderful teams in Nepal and Kyrgyzstan for really sharing their work and the findings with us. And Ananda, I will pass it over to you for some final remarks.
Great, thank you, Kula. For Rajib and perhaps for Kula, if you do want to put any points in the chat, just so everyone has a sense of some of the highlighted discussion points, that would be great. So first of all, just to say a huge thank you to Kula for beautiful moderation, to Camilo for providing technical support throughout, to our presenters, Rajib and the MAP Nepal team, Anara and the MAP Kyrgyzstan team, our interpreters, Barul and Santosh, and Olivia and Katie from the Open Innovation team. We learned so much today from all of you to help inform our phase 2 projects, which will focus on using arts-based communication structures to engage young people and decision makers. Please go to our MAP website, map.lincoln.ac.uk, to find out more about upcoming grants and also upcoming events. I had noted that on the 24th of May, we have an event called Agents of Change, in which our young people from the 4 countries will be presenting their arts-based outputs and policy briefs that they created from their phase 2 youth-led small research grants. Again, a huge thank you to everyone. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.